So then let's come full circle to what happened last week, the tragic events of this submersible. What is your view about wealthy people paying $250,000 to go down to the wreck of the Titanic, where your relatives had this miraculous survival?
I do send my condolences first and foremost to all 5 of the gentlemen who lost their lives on that submersible, and to OceanGate, who is suffering as well through this. You know, I've talked to many of my Titanic historian friends, and I've also spoken to other descendants of Titanic survivors, and also descendants of people whose family members did not live. And it's interesting to note that their opinions differ somewhat about whether extreme adventure tourism is applicable or appropriate in this situation. And the people whose relatives died on this ship, almost universally that I've spoken to, think it's a terrible idea, and who seem genuinely offended by it, that this was happening. But it's interesting to note, and I'm sure you're aware of this fact, that Stockton Rush, the CEO of OceanGate, his wife, Wendy, is the great-great-granddaughter of Ida and Isidore Strauss, who both perished on the Titanic.
An amazing twist, yeah.
So that's an interesting coincidence. Yeah, very amazing twist. So I'm assuming by that she didn't have any problem with it.
Well, I guess we don't. We don't know that.
Died.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, it's a complicated one, isn't it? Because it's had a lot of backlash. I personally think, and I've said this pretty vocally the last week, that I think that what makes this world great are people doing extraordinary things, like these kind of adventures, exploration, history seeking, and so on. There are others who say it's just a ridiculous thing for very rich people to be abusing the ocean in this way. Where do you sit with it?
Well, it's interesting, Pierce. It's, human beings, we are hardwired to be explorers. All the incredible technological innovations that we have in our lives today, all the incredible discoveries have come from exploration, especially when it comes to the seas. But I'm in my boat right now, and I'm actually commercial fishing, taking a break to speak with you guys. And I have a responsibility. I have to follow the laws and the regulations of the sea, or I can be held accountable. If someone's on my boat right now and they get injured, it's going to be my fault. So I think it's almost apples and oranges. Yes, it's wonderful to explore and discover and share that with humanity. And with something as sacred as the Titanic, you need to do it with an incredible amount of reverence and respect, and hopefully some enlightenment learning. But if you go there haphazardly and expose yourself to jeopardy, there can be the ultimate price to pay for that. And we may have seen that with this vessel.
Right.
With this submersible.
Right. Shelley, I heard that your great-grandmother was so traumatized by what had happened to her that she never really recovered, and that she would never get past the sound of people dying in the water and screaming out.
Yes, she went on Robert Ripley's radio show in 1939, and she spoke about that. And she also spoke to my father in 1960 and was quite upset and pulled him aside and said that she could never get that out of her thoughts, out of her head, the sound of 1,496 people struggling and dying in the water. Of course, it was extremely painful because the water was about 27 degrees, and it felt like knives being thrust into you. So most people, the majority of people did not drown, but they froze to death, and it was a horrific thing, and she could never really get past that. In fact, she spent 11 months in and out of a hospital trying to gather herself with what she describes as a nervous collapse. And of course, 11 months after the accident, my grandmother was born.
Right. I mean, of course, there's this horrible irony that these people who paid the money to go down on the submersible to see the wreckage of this iconic ship, they themselves suffered a horrendous death. I mean, we can only hope and pray it was as instant as the experts believe it probably was, but a horrible irony nonetheless. Thank you both very much indeed for joining me.